Hello everyone and welcome back to the Gaming Point with some friends who have gathered around the table, digitally again, sorry about that, to talk about some board games.
Hey.
Ross, it's so sad that we are not around the physical table this
Yeah, I mean, it makes a different kind of vibe, doesn't it? But, you know.
It does.
At least we're keeping consistent for this kind of conversation, right?
For this series at least, for now. We'll see how we go with it. That's Ross, my name is Luke, and we are back talking about our top 50 board games of all time. We're going to try and get this wrapped up before I leave to go to Japan for my honeymoon.
Well, maybe before 2025 would be good, probably.
That would be ideal, but my key goal is to try and get before the end of, September, because that, would be helpful. Yeah. So we've only got 20 more games to talk about, because we're into our top 20, which means that we are into the toppest of all the games that are available to us. So,
Hell yeah.
Enjoy it. So let's dive straight into this, shall we? Let's go straight into our number 20. So my number 20 is a game that I know you don't have the greatest opinion of, and this is where we're coming into that sort of Venn diagram of games and that we kind of like that are in the middle of our list. This is Wingspan.
Sure.
So I feel like my opinion on Wingspan is slightly dipping a little bit. It certainly is lower than it was last year. Not by much, but a little bit. There's a couple of games that have come in above it. So Wingspan is, as I'm sure you probably know, it's the game all about collecting burbs, looking at burbs, doing all the burb things, and laying them out into a tableau to create all sorts of powers. You start off each round with a number of actions. You're going to be taking one of those 4 different actions, which may be drawing birds, laying eggs, playing birds down, or gaining food in order to feed those birds, to entice them into that location. We've got 3 different locations to put into. Each one has a different ability, and if you choose to do that location, you get to run the bird engine effectively, trigger powers of birds, gain those resources, do all the things.
Yeah.
And it's been lauded for quite a long time. But it's just all about birds and some really nice, pretty art. It's got a whole bunch of expansions. I've got the Big Bird box, as is the official title for it, the nesting box.
Yeah. Which
has in the Oceania, Asia, and European birds.
Those are the continents.
Those are the continents, and there are going to be more continents. I'm looking forward to the Antarctic expansion, which is just penguins. Because I love penguins. So yeah, Wingspan it's a good little engine builder. It does have some issues. I do like what they did with Wingspan Asia, because that has a 2-player version, effectively. You can play it as 2 players, and you've got this little area control board that you can play with that's quite satisfying to play with. It also has it increased the play count up to 7, which I can't imagine any scenario where I would want to play Wingspan 7 players.
I can't imagine a scenario where I want to play Wingspan.
That is, that is your issue. But yeah, Wingspan, I think, I still like Wingspan. I still will probably get the expansions that come out. I'd like to see some more things up. But for me at the moment, and I'm going to talk about it, it's going to come up later, its successor
Wormspan
is a lot better. Yeah. Wormspan is significantly better for me. It might just be because I don't really care for burbs that much. The art's very pretty. I like looking at them. It's a really nice, wholesome thing. But there's just a few elements in the game that have worn over time. As I've sort of, more seasoned gamer, I've kind of gone past that, this is all awesome, to there's a few things that bug me now.
Yeah.
That don't make it a bad game by any means. A lot of people love this game. I still really enjoy it. I mean, it's number 20. There's a whole bunch of other games that did not even make this list. Yeah. So, it's pretty good. What I'm trying to tee up is that it may not be in this position next time we do this.
Yeah.
But it is still a very good game, and I do enjoy getting it out on the table and giving it a go sometime. I know you're not a fan, so give your epitaph to.
I'll try to keep it very concise, because I don't really like ragging on games, because that's not some things just aren't for some people. But I think it's quite overhyped. I think there's some engine building in there, but by the time you actually build your engine, the game's kind of over. I don't really like the shortness of it. The game I was suddenly thinking about, Carnegie, was the game I was kind of half thinking about, where you kind of got like a set amount of turns that you're kind of sort of sharing your actions with. But it feels like that game has enough actions in it that when I'm building my engine and I'm doing my stuff, I'm like, I've reached a satisfying conclusion. But I always end a game with Wingspan a bit like, okay, right, that's the end then, I guess.
Because Carnegie only has 20 actions, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
So it's got fewer actions than
Yeah, and
Wings.
they're shared as well, right? So
Yeah. I guess more because you're playing with other
Yeah.
people, but yeah, you effectively. It's
so
quite a short game, relatively.
so yeah, so I'm just like, it just doesn't do it like, and I quite like birds, not a Twitcher necessarily, but I quite like birds. So I think the theme quite appealed. I quite like the artwork on it. That quite appealed, and I should have really liked the game, but I just think it's really overhyped. I just don't think there's like a lot of game to it. But I mean, I haven't played Wormspan yet. We should, again, add it to the list. We need to play it. So
Put it on the list.
because yeah, I'd be interested to know if it kind of fixes some of the things that I don't really like about it. But we'll see. But yeah, I'm literally not that fussed. Like it doesn't even spring into my mind when I'm thinking like, what game should I play? It just wouldn't even appear.
No, exactly, and it's a rarity. It's a Stone Martin game that you don't particularly enjoy.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's the thing. Anyway, let's get off games that you don't particularly enjoy. Let's talk about a game you do particularly enjoy. What's your number 20, Ross?
So my number 20 is Acropolis. So nice little tile laying game. You kind of have like a market. You're trying to essentially abide by some rules of different types of buildings as you're laying these tiles. So each tile has kind of typically either different or similar building types on it of different colours. They score depending on placement rules. So, for example, like you want your military outposts or towers. I'm not really sure what the word is actually. There might be outposts actually on the
barracks, aren't they?
Barracks, yeah, on the outside of your city that you're building. You want the temple surrounded by other buildings. You don't want your markets next to each other because you don't want to compete with each other. All of these sort of things. So you're making sure your building placement's all good, and then you're also placing these essentially, I can't remember the districts. I think the word. No, what's the right word for it? It's the ones with the stars on it, which basically like a multiplier for the scoring. So that's really interesting anyway. But then you add an extra layer on top of it, which is kind of this 3D-esque thing where you're building on top of previously built areas, and then they essentially count as two of the thing that you've built when you build a higher level. So you're trying to manage how you are constructing your city to score some points, but also maybe like, do you sacrifice a building that you've built earlier because you're going to score more points over put something over the top of it? If you cover up quarries, which are essentially just white spaces that don't offer any scoring, they get you stone, which then lets you pick different buildings from the market or go deeper into the market to collect stuff. So yeah, it's just quite good, quite like a puzzle game and quite like a tile placing game. So yeah, it's quite nice. I think I need to play it more with different player counts. It feels quite nice at a 2-player because I feel like it's just quite quick, and there's not too much market disruption between it because it's quite frustrating. I think I played a 3-player recently, and kind of by the time, if you depending on turn order, by the time it kind of gets to you a little bit, you're kind of having to rethink about how you're taking your turn. You can't really plan for it, so I think I prefer it too. But yeah, I really enjoy it. It's a really good, quick game. Really.
I do like the 3D elements of it, the aspect of and the tile restrictions that you have in terms of building, because you can't build up unless you build over more than one tile, so you can't just stack a singular column. So I do quite like those tile placement rules and the way that those things interact with each other and they give you different strategies. Whatever reason, I really liked this game when we first played it, and then I didn't play it physically for quite a while. I ended up playing it a lot digitally because it was on Board Game Arena. And I just got bored of it. It's very easy for hate drafting to slip in, because if you see someone has built up like a whole load of barracks, military barracks, all the way around the outside, and you don't have enough stone to buy that one district that has the ×3 multiplier on it, and someone just goes, yoink.
Yeah.
And then builds over it.
Yeah.
It's quite annoying.
Yeah.
It's good. I would play it. It's not what I necessarily need to have. And in fact, you've got the copy that I had because I sold it to you.
Yeah,
so it works out. I'd be interested to see what the Agora expansion offers. I feel like it will be more. It would be more of the same kind of things. But there might be some more decision points that you throw in there, so I don't know.
Yeah.
This is an interesting start of this list.
Yes. Well, yeah, I think a lot of what you've said there maybe is a bit more mitigated in the 2-player game, because if you've got 2 people basically sniping the tiles that you need, that's really hard to come back from. But if it's just one other person doing it, then you can kind of pivot a little bit, right? So I think that's why I think 2 players is a good player count for it.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting one for our number 20s. Neither of us particularly wants to play the other's number 20 game, so we'll see if we agree anymore as we go into our number 19s.
My number 19 is Twilight Inscription. So
Yep, I'm out.
Yeah, so basically, it's a roll and write of Twilight Imperium, but not at all, because it's just got shares the same name and the same kind of terminology, but the game itself is like radically different. There's not really any negotiation in it. There's not really like combat in the same way. It's quite a convoluted roll and write. I love a roll and write, so it's quite nice to have a maybe slightly more complicated one in there. You essentially roll. You flip a card. Typically, it says roll dice. You choose how you spend the resources on those dice to either explore planets or colonize planets, or to build some ships to have combat, or to do some trading. Essentially, it's kind of 4 sheets that you've got, and you're just trying to score points by kind of comboing a little bit. You get your faction, which are the factions from Twilight Imperium. And they give you an ability, so it might be like you lean more heavily into combat or more heavily into the trade element or whatever it may be. But yeah, you're not really a fan of Twilight Imperium. Kills it enough for you, I think, really, when it comes to play it, because it's quite because it's a heavier roll and write as well, maybe. But
so I don't mind a heavier roll and write. I mean, Hadrian's Wall we discussed on a previous couple of lists because we both really like that as a heavier roll and write. There's the Anarchy that's coming up also from Garfield Games, which is the spiritual successor for that, which looks like that's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, the Twilight Inscription or Twilight Imperium world doesn't interest me as a theme, and we have played this digitally, to be fair, and I think playing it digitally did sour my opinions on playing it physically, because it was just a slog in order to do any of it. I am game to give it a go physically. In fact, we started playing it physically at Aircon, and then we stopped because it was slightly late, and we're just like, there's actually more of us to play now, and let's play this. Let's play this silly little like trash game, which was actually that was actually quite good fun. That little game. So I'm down to give it a go. It's not going to be high on my list.
It's a shame actually, because I think both Twilight Imperium and Twilight Inscription have been ruined for you a little bit because of the digital playthrough beforehand rather than the physical one. So
maybe slightly. Except I was never that high on playing any of the Twilight games. They're not my style of games. I'm not really that into the negotiation or that direct conflict in games. I don't mind it so much in a 2-player game like Seven Wonders Duel or Jets of Robin Hood, because that's the game, and it's it's kind of fun. If you're going tit for tat, then it's fine. But if you get ganged up on in a big game like that, it's quite depressing. It's even more depressing if you're trying to lose and leave the game and people can't kill you.
Yeah, I mean that is unfortunate.
That was obscene. That was ridiculous. So that just soured my opinions of the players I was playing with. To be honest, they just could not hit me, which was really annoying. But anyway, so it's there. I will give Twilight Inscription a go.
Yeah. Because it's not Twilight Imperium, it is different. It is a roll and
write. It's a completely different game. What I did find with it though was you have to be very flexible with that game, because whatever the dice come up as, you're going to have to pivot radically between the different things, and there's not necessarily so much you can go from, I can use this that I've just gained from here over here, and then because you're only nominating a single sector at a time. Yeah,
I think part of the challenge as well is the card comes out and it gives you some resources, and then you have to pick a sheet that you're working on off the back of that, and then you roll some dice which give you some more resources. So you might get like 2 resources at a time and be like, oh, this is really going to go down this like exploration route or something like that, and then the dice will roll, and then they give you nothing that you wanted. And it is always a choice, but it might not have been the optimum one or the one you really wanted, and so it's a bit like, that's a bit annoying. But the only last comment I was going to make was it's dropped about 14 places or so on my list. So I think it was like 5, 6, 7 or something like that beforehand, and so it has dropped quite a lot in favour of some games which I prefer now. But I still, it would be a game that I would look to play with an opportunity to play it. So
I mean, I'm looking at my top 10. I mean, my game that's coming up for number 19 that's dropped 11 places, but I've also had so many new games have come in the last year that have jumped in above it. So if those games were taken out, this game's actually pretty high, which is not too bad for a game that I didn't play that frequently. This is Five Tribes.
Oh, nice.
Of Nakala. So Five Tribes is a Moncala game where you are picking up these meeples. Basically, you've got this 5x5 grid of tiles that are set out that have all got different things on them. You're going to be picking up the meeples on them, and you're going to be dropping them off one at a time until you get to a final destination tile, You'll then pick up all meeples of the same colour that you have just dropped onto there. You'll trigger that meeple's power, and you'll activate the power of the tile. If you clear out the tile, you can put a carol on it. It's now your tile forever. You're going to score some points. More meeples might come onto it later, but you own that tile from here on in, and you get to use the power from it. And it's a game that I've always really highly regarded because it's so different to anything else that I have. It's effectively a worker placement game, except
the workers are already on the board, right? And you're moving them around. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. It's interesting. It's now come up on Board Game Arena, and I was like, oh, cool, let's play this, because I haven't played it for a very long time, and I'm slightly obsessed with playing on BGA, because it's such a good game. It's just a really difficult one to get to the table, because it is really good. It's just a bit of one of those faffy games, and you can find with, there's things like the market and these special gins that come out that you shuffle around, and you can purchase them. They have special ongoing powers. You've got a tray of market cards which have got different values that you can sell to the market to gain money, and I do like that you've got this bidding for position, but the money that you're spending is also your victory points, so you have to try and figure out how good to go. I remember I had one game where we were just sat here going, is it worth me going for that 18 cost to get this number of points, and would it be enough to snipe you in the end? And it just had a really we just sat here going, just for one Eurogaming it. It's just a really good game. The implementation is so smooth on BGA, even though it's only an alpha. And I just love how unique that system is of just pick up the stuff, drop, this one. But it does lend itself to AP. So you are going to be sat there for a little while going, okay, this?
Yeah.
Sure. There are definitely some people that I would never play this game with because they would get sucked into the AP of what is the optimum move.
Yeah.
And you would never get the game finished. But I really want to try with the expansions that have been released, which are annoyingly quite hard to come by. And I think it also has a nice little special place because it's a Days of Wonder game that a lot of people really enjoy that isn't Ticket to Ride.
Yeah.
So.
I really like Five Tribes. I really, really enjoy it as well. I don't own it, and we never play it, so it kind of just disappears in the back of my mind. And then we'll suddenly make a reappearance, and then we'll play it like we did on BJ or whatever. And I'll be like, "Oh, this is a really fun game. It's a really good game." So, yeah, it's kind of one of those stealth ones. I think it's a little bit quietly unassuming, but it's actually really good. So,
yeah, it's a real good time. So that's our number 19. So let's go to our number 18s. My number 18 is another Garphill Games game. I mentioned a couple of them already in this list, and this one is probably the one that launched Garphill onto the map. So this is Raiders of the North Sea.
Okay, yeah.
So this is a really interesting worker placement game where the whole concept is you're Viking raiders in the North Sea going off and raiding these camps and monasteries and all these sorts of things. And the whole mechanism of the game is worker placement. You are taking a worker that you have on your board, you're placing it down, you're doing an action. And then you're picking up another worker from somewhere else on the board and doing that action. So this entire time you're basically doing 2 actions per turn and you're just going bup, 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 bup. Gathering resources, gathering crew, placing them out into your ship, going off and fighting Vikings, and they can potentially be sent off to Valhalla, which is not necessarily the best thing in the world because you can lose some crew, but it gets you, weirdly, if you lose them, it gives you points in this sort of glory track that they have. There's 3 different scoring tracks alongside, and it's just a really solid game. It's dropped a few places. It's dropped 9 places. It was number 9 last time we did this list. Again, 11, 12 games have come in since in the last year that have jumped it up. We played it not too long ago, actually, at the pub. Yeah. With a bunch of people for the first time. Just like, it's still really smooth. It stands up as a really solid game.
One of the things I most enjoy is that almost trade up of workers kind of bit, because as you're putting a worker down, because you can pull a worker from somewhere else, you can actually pull a higher value worker back up.
Yes.
So, and it adds an extra layer of strategy there, which is when you're then placing that higher value worker, you have to be thinking, well, if I put this down, I'm opening this up for someone else to then pick up and do their action. So can I put it in a less favourable, do I take a less favourable action so that when they pick this worker up, they do a less favourable action? And it just adds an extra little bit on top of which is already quite a good kind of, a game with some good strategy behind it. So it adds an extra layer on there as well, which is really nice. Yeah, really.
I think the only ding I have against it is the dice rolling element of combat in some elements, but it's not that hard to mitigate by
Yeah.
just having a powerful crew and spending resources for strength.
Yeah, if you plan ahead for it, right, then it's not the end of the world. So
So yeah, that's my number 18, Raiders of the Lost City.
yeah, cool.
Good stuff.
I can't remember if my number 18's appeared on your list. It was going to appear on your list. I'm not really sure. My number 18 is Sky Team. Which
It's not on my list actually. I think it was number 60. No, wait, where is Sky Team on here? You talk about Sky Team. Oh, 73 for me.
Okay, so it's quite fun. So we've spammed Sky Team quite a lot. So you play as a pilot and a co-pilot. You're essentially trying to land a plane at different airports. The airport you pick, though, will set out different challenges for you. So in a kind of a very base game-esque, what you're trying to do is have your landing gears down, your flaps up, your wings level. You're trying to make sure that you're going slow enough when you land. I'm trying to think.
No planes in front of you.
There's no other planes that you're going to crash into in front of you. So all of these things you're trying to just manage as you're flying. You play over several rounds and you roll some dice in secret essentially, and then you assign those dice taking it in turns one at a time into these slots on your aeroplane to resolve all those problems. But yeah, as you go and play through some other airports, it adds some extra things like you have to fly around mountains. So at certain rounds you have to have your axes at a particular tilt, only then to tilt it back again. You might have loads of planes. There might be no planes, but you're losing fuel every round, and so you need to get into the airport as quickly as you can. There's really icy on the track, so you have to basically play make sure you apply the brakes, whatever it may be, right? So
I just love the idea of ice on the tracks for a
Yes.
plane. It just amused me. And if there were any pilots watching, he meant the flaps are extended.
Yeah.
Don't come at us. We're not pilots.
Yeah, none of this. Yeah, basically, make sure your plane does the good things that the plane needs to do before you land it, right?
Yep.
But it's a really good team game. You can, again, like these kind of games where there's not a lot of communication, you kind of create a silent way of communicating based on. But it's better than something like Hanabi, where you kind of you're almost having to cheat a little bit to give the clue. Like, this is a 1. Sort of to get them to then play the 1, whereas this is good because you could be like, I'm putting a 6 into engines, and actually we know we've had the opportunity to say, well, if I'm dumping a really high number in that slot, I only have high numbers or something like that, so we need to figure out how to mitigate this round because it's going to be a problem otherwise. So so it's really good that there is that kind of hidden communication element.
Yeah, and you have got mitigation on dice options as well, because you have coffee that you can
Yes,
get.
you
You
can
get
drink
coffee
some
tokens
coffee,
which you can
yeah.
use to help your concentration. You can mitigate your dice up or down by 1 for each coffee that you drink, which I imagine that those pilots are jittering
They
by
are
the end of
jacked
some of
at
these
the end of
flights.
that. Yeah, at the end of that flight. Yeah.
Then we go, all right, everybody, we landed.
Yeah.
Just insane to think of. But yeah, it's got a really good puzzle. I'd love to see what the expansion brings on this one, because there's a new one which is Turbulence.
Yes,
That feels like the sort of thing that a
I think it is.
plane game would be based on. So yeah, looking forward to see what that one brings.
same.
Cool. That's our number 18. So let's go into 17.
Are you ready for this?
I'm
You've not
braced.
played this.
Go
No, it's
on.
not that one. You've not played this before. It's Vinos. So it's a Lacerda,
Ah,
which is
okay.
why I said, are you ready for this? Because it's just another Lacerda. But, okay. Vinos, how do I explain quite a complex, obviously, not the most complex, but a Lacerda.
Viticulture on steroids.
Yeah, a little bit, as quickly as I can. Essentially, I would describe as kind of like an area control game a little bit. So you have regions in Portugal that you are trying to gain control of to get access to some wines, and then you are making some wines, and then you are then selling those wines to like a hotel or something like that, for example. And then as you do that, depending on the value, you're then putting your marker essentially over that value, and then you're locking other people out of then being able to put stuff there. So there's quite a lot of jostling in there. I think it's a bit of a stealthy kind of area control-esque bit, but it's quite nice because on the flip side of that, you're kind of creating your own niche within that. So if you're picking up a particular type of wine, which usually gives you access to an extra ability or something, you can kind of go all in on that one type of wine and deny everyone else that market opportunity. There's some experts you can hire to do some stuff. It is a little bit like viticulture on jacked up a little bit extra level. It's probably not the most complex of, I don't really, personal opinion, the most complex of the Lacerdas. I like Portugal and I like wine, so the theme speaks to me as well a little bit. So that's so that's all good. But yeah, I know it's one we need to get you to play, really.
Yes.
Because I'd be curious again where it sits on all the Lacerdas for you and stuff. But yeah, it's just quite nice. Just a good Lacerda. It's sitting kind of, well, it's just sitting a bit better then, but it's sitting in the middle of my top 50, right? So yeah.
Well, I know at least one more Lacerda is going to pop up on your list in the next 15 or so games.
How many more have we got?
It's going to be up there, pretty high there.
I've got two more. I think two more Lacerdas to appear. I think.
I know what one of them is. I don't know what the other one is going to be. Interesting. Okay. Well, there's a whole lot of stuff that's going to come up on those when I play it eventually, and whether I just view it as being another, it's a viticulture on steroids kind of thing. I don't know. It sounds interesting. It sounds like a good time. I'm indifferent to Portugal. I don't like wine, so the theme is less of a thing for me. But then again, a lot of the Lacerda themes are a little pasted for me.
Yeah,
I think this. Necessarily feel that.
No, I think this one's probably is closer than some of the others, to be fair. But I mean, none of them are like a perfect match. They're not the most. Yeah.
But hey, looking forward to it, giving it a go. It's another worker placement with executive action, so what's not to like? My number 17 is a game that you have not played, to my knowledge. This is, continuing on from what I had initially, which was boats. We then had planes, and now we've got cars.
Nice.
This is Thunder Road Vendetta.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Thunder Road Vendetta. It's a game where you're racing your cars along this track and just basically going along a dirt track and seeing who survives. Mad Max in a little
Yes, I was going to say it's
game.
Mad Max-like, isn't it? Yeah.
You've got your 3 different cards that you're going to be rolling the dice for. You're going to be choosing which card gets which die, and if you happen to have any sort of collisions with any of your opponent's cards or with your own cards, a collision roll is going to happen, which means that you could have the cards bounce off in certain directions, and it may not necessarily go favourably for you. I've had situations where my car has slammed into Laura's when we're playing, and my own car spun off and crashed into a rocks and exploded, which was a really unfortunate scenario for me. But hey, it happens. It's just one of those games where no one takes it too seriously because it's just good fun. It's a little bit bonkers. It's a little bit of, you could easily retheme this with Wacky Races, and people will be like, take my money kind of thing.
Can I jump in on that thought just very quickly? Because what I've been I'm trying to be a good, human being and not interrupt you, but this thought has been bubbling in my brain, which is how it might compare to something like Steampunk Rally and or Formula D, right? Because it feels like they're not the same, but it almost feels like maybe a bit of a mush of both, but not quite. But it sounds like it's closer actually to Formula D than it would be to Steampunk Rally.
Yeah, it's close to Formula D because Steampunk Rally, you're not. We talked about this in the previous list. That's very solitary. You just happen to be running along the race at the same time. You can't really do anything to inconvenience your opponents. Formula D, you can at least block off some spaces potentially.
Yes.
Again, you're not really causing problems. You just have to make choices based on the dice. Whereas in this, you are actively going for your opponents. Like you could choose, I'm going to take my big guy, I'm going to give him a 5, he's going to smash into your smallest car, I'm going to watch it spin off.
Yeah, rather than a byproduct.
Or it's going to, I'm going to position this one to be just behind it, and then I'm going to roll this dice to see whether I shoot you, in which case you're damaged, your car can't move, etc, etc. There's all sorts of random hazards that are placed out on the board, which can either be like a road space, which means you go faster, or it could be like an oil slick, which just spends you spinning off in a random direction, which is always funny to watch. When you just go, all right, I'm going forward, and then you spin and somehow go directly backwards from where you've just come from, and then you go, I'm going to go forwards again, and you spin off and go backwards. It's just a bit of a bizarre thing. The damage that occurs to you also has some random negative penalties, which is just silly and fun. You can spend some time to recover. You've got a helicopter that comes in and can shoot out other cars as they're driving around. So it's just good fun. It's one of those I'd love to try at its maximum player count for just carnage. It does have a player elimination element in it.
But how long's the game?
Well, that's the thing. In a 2-player game, you basically go until either one person's completely eliminated, which a 2-player game doesn't matter, or someone gets to a fixed point at the end of the track. In a multiplayer game, or 3 or more, if someone gets eliminated, you just put the end of the track down, and then first one to cross the line wins the race effectively. So it's a case of, okay, you're eliminated, but you're only really racing 3 or 4 rounds maybe to see what happens. So it's not too bad. And,
that sounds like it sounds like they're trying to mitigate it a little bit, right? And I think you wouldn't have any jeopardy if you weren't potentially going to get knocked out. So
yeah, exactly. So it's a good fun little game. We should definitely try it at some point. Add it to the list.
Add it to the list.
I'm making notes of everything that we say. We'll add it to the list as we go through this, and we will have, I'm sure when we do the wrap up, this is the list.
Yeah, and then maybe that's the challenge for next year, to actually play the games on the list, right? So rather than just keep adding to it.
Well, we'll make ourselves worse. All right, let's see what we've got at number 16 then. My number 16 is a new to me game for this year's list, and it was a new to you game up until about.
I thought you just said a mutiny game, like it's just like it was an uprising or something like that. And anyway, carry on.
Yeah, it was definitely a new to you game as of a couple of weeks ago when we played it. This is Sankore, the Pride of Mansa Musa. So Sankore, the Pride of Mansa Musa, is all about building this library or building this school, effectively, university in Mansa Musa. You're basically taking your meeples and taking them through classes to try and boost their knowledge in these 4 different scientific disciplines of mathematics, theology, exploration, and law. And you've just got these meeples running around doing different things, and each time you do one of the lessons, you get to advance that track in some way. And it's just a real point salad of a game. You're trying to sort of build this engine that you go, every time I'm going to do this action, I'm going to trigger this ability, which means I can do these things, and place out these little tokens out onto the board for a little bit of area control, for majority scoring in various parts of the mid-game. You've got this really interesting shared knowledge system. You have, okay, so every time I've taught a lesson, I'm going to get my own little personal bump from this because I've taught it multiple times. But as you're teaching and taking students away and enrolling them into your classes, the overall knowledge is brought into it. So there's a really thematic element behind it because people, when you bring people into students, they're encouraged to go off and talk about their knowledge. So the knowledge zeitgeist effectively starts to increase. So you go, okay, well now I can take this action. Cool. I enroll the student. I'm going to take them into a lesson. Now I've enrolled them, I've got a +3 to my knowledge over here, and a +4 on my own side, so I've got 7, so I've effectively got 7 strength to put into this action, which means I can go here and do this thing. It's a really difficult game to explain without having it in front of you, I think. But it's a really, really beautiful board. Like, it's a very pretty tool art. It's a really solid game. I think it was off the back of Merv, which I played previously. I really enjoyed. This blows it out of the water. It's a really solid successor. It's a really stunning game, and it just has some really interesting elements to go into. There's definitely probably go for this one first. Go for law first, so you can build up your engine a little bit and then spam it as it goes on.
So I was going to say, obviously it was a learning game for me, and I think I fell into the trap that I do with some of these heavy games where I'm like, I want to do a bit of everything, and then if you do a little bit of everything, it's not necessarily a bad strategy, but if you do a little bit of everything, you do it in the kind of the wrong order, then you're not playing catch up. It just makes it a little bit harder. So I think it's one where it'd be good if you play with someone who's played before and you have enough time for them to be a bit like, here's probably some of the things you want to look out for. Not necessarily like, here's how you win, or but to give you some sort of strategy advice in the upfront, because I think it also could fall into the trap of a game where you play and you're like, whew, that was a lot, and I didn't really get to do the thing, so I probably won't play that again. Which I think, just to be clear, that wasn't my opinion. But I think you could fall into that. I think just in comparison to a game that's, who knows, maybe will have turned up on my list, Tapestry, which is, if you just teach someone the rules of Tapestry and then you just say, now play it, they're going to have an absolutely time, because they're just going to end up with I think the first time we played, I think we ended up with 60 points each or something like that, something ridiculous.
Something stupid, yeah.
So you need to teach them a bit of the strategy about how to do it, and I think Sankore needs that a lot as well, because Yeah, because otherwise you kind of end up in like a little bit of a, I don't know, dead ends potentially and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, I really the other things which I think you haven't mentioned was when you basically do some sort of learning, you take a book that you have and you put it into a library, and then there's 3 shelves in the base and I think 5 or 6 in the
six in the advanced game, yeah.
And then you score based on how many, well, the majority basically of the books in the area versus how many kind of like victory points, I guess, essentially you've got in your own player board. So you could be like stacking like law, for example, on your personal board, but have almost no majority control in that library, and that means that they will score you very little points at the end of the game. So you're about trying to get the right balance as well. About getting the right balance. So I say, and I really like a game where you, as you're playing, you can kind of control the victory points at the end. It's really good. I want to play it again now that I've got kind of a bit more of an understanding of how it works, basically. Yeah,
we absolutely will. All right. Well, what have you got as your last game of this list, Ross?
Again, I think it hasn't come up. Yeah, I'm not really sure. I can't remember, but I feel like it should be on your list somewhere. Is Cut Nahura?
It's much higher.
Yeah, cool. So probably for me, obviously this is based off one play. So I think with the more plays, I imagine this probably would start creeping up quite a lot. I'll do a light touch on it because I think probably, Luke, you're going to have a lot more of an in-depth on it and you might want to cover it off when eventually it does come up again. But essentially, you kind of got a town that you're building out by placing tiles down, and you've got a mine that you are mining underneath that town. And each turn you have you have cards in your hand, which kind of have 2 sides to it. And so you can pick a side, you play it for that action. But obviously, if you pick a particular side, you won't be able to do what's on the other. So you have to think about how you're using the cards in your hands and make sure you're lining up the actions in the right order. We've talked about, I'll cover off very briefly, really, like I said, really ugly box, but really beautiful components after the fact.
Yeah.
And the one thing which I haven't mentioned, which is probably like this is like, it's not even something you necessarily like interact with as a player particularly, but it's just a really nice feature of the game, is the market bit, which adds a little bit of, I don't want to say randomization because that's not true. It makes it feel like you're actually like interacting with the market, right? You're interacting with supply and demand. So
because the way the market works is that every time you build a building that is related to one of those particular goods, you move the slider across to the right. So you go, okay, we have more of this that we're producing. But there might be situations where you go, okay, more population is coming into this. So we actually have to move a number of cards up, which means that there's going to be the demand either increases or the relative availability is down, because we've got loads of beer, we've got loads of breweries, great, but also the supply might be high, but demand is low because there aren't many people. So the people go up, the demand goes up, but your supply isn't as high. So you have to try and work that balance. And the way you move those around is it becomes your income.
Yeah.
The more of those buildings you have built out, the more you have control over them and bump them up in your own guild. It's just a level of income that you will get from them. Because everything that is related in this game is based on the value of the resources. You only have one currency, and that's money.
Yeah.
And you will spend money. It will tell you, to build this building, you need 3 wood. Well, this turn, wood might only be worth 2 money. But in the next game, once you've built a carpenter's hut, for example, wood will go down because there's now another carpenter in town, which is great. So wood's going to cost 1 next time you go around to buy something. But as a result of doing some other things that have gone on, 20 more people have turned up. So the demand for wood has spiked, which means there's less wood available. Which means wood is now worth 3 money. So now if you want to buy things, you're going to have to pay 3 money for it. And it's a really interesting puzzle, and I love it. It's so good. It's such a good game.
So like I said, we're going to probably talk about it further up in your list. So
I want to play it again. I haven't played it in a while, and I really want to get it back to the table. We played it at Aircon with Paula and our friend Tom, and it was just that was a really fun experience.
Yeah, it was a good game
because you hadn't met either of those people before, which was good. So cool. So those are our games that fit in the 20 to 16 list. Let us know in the comments below what you think of the games that we have discussed so far, and there's more going to come up later. We've got another 3 of these videos to do. So if you like what you see, give us a thumbs up, like, subscribe, do all the fun things that you do with YouTube. Keep in touch with us. Let us know how you're getting on. How are you? How's your day been? You doing all right? Just check in.
Check in with them.
You know. Yeah, check in with the fans. You know, let them know what they're thinking of them.
You're just going to literally get a good full stop just in the comments now.
Well, you know, hey, it's interaction, right?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
So until next time, thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you again soon. Bye bye.